Fred and Rose West were an English couple who committed some of the most horrific crimes in modern history. Fred was born in 1941 and grew up in a troubled family. His childhood was difficult, and he was known for being violent from a young age. Fred had a history of criminal behavior, including theft and sexual assaults, even before he met Rose. He married his first wife, Catherine Costello, and they had a daughter named Charmaine. The marriage was abusive and chaotic, and Fred's violent tendencies only worsened over time. In 1969, Fred met Rose Letts, who was just 15 years old at the time. Rose came from an abusive household as well, with a father who was controlling and a mother who struggled with mental health issues. Despite the age difference, Fred and Rose quickly became involved in a relationship. They moved in together and eventually got married in 1972. They went on to have 8 children, but their home was far from happy. Fred was controlling and violent, and Rose soon became his willing accomplice in a series of brutal crimes. The Wests started by abusing their own children, with beatings and sexual assaults being a regular part of their lives. However, their cruelty extended far beyond their family. Fred and Rose began luring young women to their home at 25 Cromwell Street in Gloucester. These women were often vulnerable and easily manipulated. Once inside the house, they were subjected to horrific torture, sexual abuse, and eventually murder. The Wests buried many of their victims in the cellar or the garden of their home, which later became known as the House of Horrors. One of their earliest victims was Charmaine, Fred's daughter from his first marriage. Rose is believed to have killed Charmaine while Fred was serving a prison sentence for theft. Another early victim was Rena Costello, Fred's first wife, who was killed when she came looking for her missing daughter. Over the years, the Wests continued to lure and kill young women, their methods growing more sadistic with each crime. In 1987, they murdered their own daughter, Heather, who had threatened to expose the abuse she and her siblings were suffering. Heather's body was buried in the garden, like many of their other victims. For years, the Wests managed to avoid detection, in part because their victims were often people who wouldn't be immediately missed. However, their crimes began to unravel in 1992, when one of their daughters, Louise, confided in a friend about the abuse she was experiencing at home. The police were eventually informed, and an investigation began. In 1994, the police searched the Wests' home at 25 Cromwell Street and discovered the remains of several women and girls. Fred was arrested and confessed to many of the murders, but Rose denied any involvement, though evidence clearly showed she was deeply involved in the crimes. Fred West committed suicide in prison in 1995, before he could be tried for the murders. Rose was found guilty of 10 murders and was sentenced to life in prison, where she remains today. The West's crimes shocked the nation and left a lasting scar on the community. Their house was demolished to erase the memory of the horrors that took place there, but the story of Fred and Rose West continues to haunt all who hear it. Their legacy is one of unimaginable cruelty, and the suffering they caused will never be forgotten.